And good evening, Pittsburgh Steelers fans. Welcome to another episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I'm your host, Tony Defio, and I thank you for joining me on the about to be snowy Friday night in Pittsburgh. I was hoping we'd be past this, but we're supposed to get a few inches of snow overnight, even though it's March 11th, going on to March 12th. But that's okay. I mean, it's not the end of the world. But I thank you for joining me. And before I get started, as always, I'd like to ask you to please like and subscribe to our Behind the Steel Curtain YouTube channel, where we bring you live podcasts each and every day, including this show, The Steelers Hangover with Brian Anthony Davis, Shannon White, and yours truly, Steelers Preview with Jeff Hartman, Dave Schofield, and Brian, post-game stuff, Know Your Enemy with Jeffrey Benedict and Michael Beck, The Scobro Show with Dave and his brother Rich, Touchdown Under with Matty Peverall and Mark Davison. So many shows. And, of course, you can catch those shows also live on Facebook each and every day, every night. And if you can't catch those shows live, you can always catch them on an audio platform after the fact. I personally like iHeartRadio. But you can pick Spotify, Stitcher, Google, Apple. The list goes on. So please check all those shows out. And, of course, we have a host of audio-only shows, such as Let's Ride with Jeff Hartman, I'm drawing a blank. The Live Mic with Michael Beck. I'm a bit under the weather. The Live Mic with Michael Beck, the Stat Geek with Dave, the War Room with Maddie, What Yin's Talking About with Kyle. From the cutting room floor? But if I didn't, that's Jeffrey. That's his great show where he breaks down the X's and O's. So you can catch shows on any audio platform. So please check those out. And, of course, check out Behind the Steel Curtain, the website. We bring you news, commentary, film breakdown. Anytime there's a trade or a rumor or a release from a player from another team who could be linked to the Steelers, we're there to bring it to you. And please keep checking us out, because it's about to hit the free agent frenzy. I guess officially on Wednesday, but the illegal tampering phase begins on Monday, and there'll be a lot of hot rumors out there. And who knows, maybe the Steelers will be a part of it for a change. So please check us out. Check us out. And let's see who we have in the live chat. We have, who was the first one in? Daredevil. All right. He's got a really, really good record in that regard. Kathy Ford, Cree Ix, Chad Chekek, Let's Toast Media. That's an interesting name. Clarence Washington, the legend Clarence, who's here every Friday, Monday. Every time I'm on here, I see him. So welcome, Clarence. Just me, Ryan O'Toole. And let's see who else. Arnett Oliver, who joins us from Facebook. All right. Steelers Pittsburgh. Steeler Chick 46. Okay. Let's get on with the show. And the show, of course, is about free agency. Before I get into that, I'll talk about the Steelers state heading into free agency, or the state of the Steelers, I should say, heading into free agency next week. And that includes the hopes for many weeks and really months, if you're talking about Aaron Rodgers, that the Steelers would somehow be able to acquire Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson in trades, or in a trade for one of those guys. And of course, those dreams were shattered on Tuesday when, I think it was Tuesday. Yeah, Tuesday, when Rodgers said that he would stay with the Packers in 2022. And we later found out that he's going to sign a 4-year, $200 million contract with $153 million of it guaranteed. And later that morning, Russell Wilson was traded from the Seahawks to the Broncos for 2 number ones, 2 number twos, a 5th-round pick, Drew Lock, tight end Noah Fant, and defensive lineman Shelby Harris, who led the Broncos in sacks last year. So that was quite the get for the Seahawks, but it was also potentially quite the get for the Broncos, because you can't do anything without a quarterback, right? And the Broncos finally found their man after 7 years after Peyton retired. And it seems like they can't draft anybody. So, John Elway, he went out and signed Peyton Manning 10 years ago when he was cut by the Colts in a salary move. And then, of course, he acquired Russell Wilson the other day. So like I wrote about on Friday, those teams, the Packers and the Broncos, are in different places than are the Steelers right now. Meaning, I think they're closer to contending than Pittsburgh is right now. So it behooved them to get things right with their quarterback and to secure a bona fide franchise guy, and that's why they did that. And the Packers they're gambling. They're gambling on a guy who hasn't won them a Super Bowl since he won them that last one against the Steelers in 2010, and Aaron Rodgers, a guy who's been a problem as far as being critical of his organization. Of course, the vaccination stuff. He's gone from being one of the more popular players in the NFL over the past year to one of the most vilified. So they're taking a gamble, guaranteeing that guy $153 million. He's 38 years old. He'll be 39 by the end of the 2022 campaign. His birthday's in December. I looked it up. And so they're taking a chance that he's not going to just up and retire in a year or so, or he's not going to be angry again. But they needed to get him. They need to keep him, just kind of like the Steelers did last year with Ben, because he's really their at the moment their best option to win, to contend, to get to a Super Bowl and to win one. And when you look at what's going on in the NFC right now, Tom Brady retired, Russell Wilson obviously is gone. So there's more of an opportunity for him and the Packers to win now. I mean, they haven't gotten to a Super Bowl since 2010. So maybe the NFC is opening up a little bit more. It wasn't that long ago that it was considered the stronger conference. Now you look at the quarterback movement, and you have of course Wilson in Denver, and of course that whole division. Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, even Derek Carr, and of course the AFC North with Lamar and now Joe Burrow and maybe Baker Mayfield. So of course Josh Allen in the East. So the AFC looks like it might be the more dominant conference, at least for the next couple of years. I mean, things can change pretty quickly, but looks to me like that won't happen for a couple of years. So they're going to be the power conference for now, or so it would have seemed. It would appear. So, and that's why the Broncos had to do what they had to do, because they're competing in a division with so many good quarterbacks, and there's pressure there to win. There's pressure there to find that next guy. Whereas the Steelers, in my opinion, obviously it's a podcast of opinion, so I don't even have to say my opinion. It's my opinion. The Steelers are in a different situation. They're in a rebuild, and you might say, well, if they had Rodgers or Wilson, they'd be better. Of course, they'd be better. They'd be better. They'd be quote unquote capable of beating anybody on any given Sunday. They'd be dangerous, but that's probably still be a 9-8 or 10-7 team. And they still wouldn't be consistent, and they'd still probably struggle to make the playoffs. Yeah, when they got there, they might be able to do some damage because of a Aaron Rodgers or a Russell Wilson, but they wouldn't be a complete team, even with those guys. Or one of those guys as their quarterback. They would not be a complete team. And you look at their roster right now, there's question marks everywhere, certainly on the offensive line, even at wide receiver with, about Juju, James Washington's all but gone. Heck, Ray McLeod's a free agent. People weren't sold on Chase Claypool. They want him traded, as a matter of fact, or cut. Which what else is new? People always want somebody cut anymore. And of course, people are just barely sold on Deontay Johnson after his first Pro Bowl season. So of course, the defensive line's up in the air, inside linebackers up in the air. The secondary, I mean, they don't have a Joe Hayden's not under contract right now. Akello Witherspoon is a free agent, or soon will be. So Terrell Edmonds is a free agent because they didn't pick up his 5th-year option. So there's a lot of question marks. So to try to go low in, so to speak, and bring in Aaron Rodgers for a team, or Russell Wilson, or Deshaun Watson, I'm sure that we'll talk about that soon. To bring in one of those guys when you have so many question marks and you're giving away, you have to give away so many draft picks. I refuse to say draft. I'm not going to say that C word. I'm so sick of hearing draft, blah, blah, blah. It's a fancier way of saying draft picks. It's all they are, draft picks. When you say draft, well, I'll say it, draft capital. You're trying to make yourself more important. No offense. But giving away all those draft picks for those guys. Now, of the 3, obviously, I would be more than okay with Deshaun Watson because he's young, 26, 27, and he's an incredible talent, and you need that guy to compete. So, yeah, you would accrue so many losses in terms of the players you'd have to give up and the draft picks you'd have to give up, but you'd have that guy for 10 or 12 years, and you could certainly build around him. But obviously, if he didn't have all these allegations against him, if he didn't just barely escape charges on, inappropriate behavior, I'll just leave it at that, against basically close to 22 or close to 24 women, then he wouldn't be available on the trading block. So, to bring him in here would be a big PR risk. Excuse me, my throat is scratchy from talking already. So, bringing any one of those guys in, Wilson, Watson, Rodgers, one's, they all come with a ton of risk because first of all, you have to pay all those guys or any of those guys a huge salary. You have to give up a lot of draft picks, and in the case of 2 of them, they're getting old. So they might be on the down. Well, they're definitely on. I know Aaron Rodgers has just won the MVP 2 years in a row, but he's your physical abilities tend to fall off a cliff just like that in professional sports. So, to say that they ever think that those guys were going to come here, meaning Rodgers and Wilson, I thought that was always a pipe dream, or I always thought that was a pipe dream. I never thought it was realistic. I know people were clamoring for it. I got accused of writing a clickbait article on Friday when all I did was state the facts that people were clamoring for Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson, and to say otherwise is foolish because they were. The media was, the fans were. Let's be real. But to think that was ever really going to happen with all the problems this team has right now, I don't know why people thought that. Other than it was just wishful thinking, and I get it, but I think the Steelers, they just got out from under a huge contract that was kind of, they had a great quarterback in Ben up until really 2019. He really wasn't the same after that. After 2018, I should say, when he led the league in passing. They had a great quarterback, but they had to pay the price to keep him, of course, like every other team does when they have a quarterback of his caliber. So, they're finally out from under that kind of a salary. And to kind of jump back into bed with another quarterback with another huge salary. Again, when you have so many areas of your team that you have to address, to me, it just doesn't make any real sense to do that. And I think they need to just take a step back and build their team up in other areas and address other areas through free agency, through the draft. Maybe you go out and get one of these veterans like a Trubisky. For some reason, people were shocked that he might command $10 million. Same with Jameis Winston. Meanwhile, I read that about Winston like a month ago when I was looking at the top 100 free agents. His projected salary was like $7 million and up to 12 with incentives. So why people were shocked that Trubisky could command this much on the open market, which has been rumored, you shouldn't be shocked by that because, the top guys are making 35, 40, 45 million a year. So somebody like Trubisky's probably going to want to sign a 1-year prove-it deal, but he's not going to want to go anywhere and start for $2 or $3 or $4 or $5 million. He's going to want to start. If he's going to be your starter, he's going to want at least 7 figures. Not 7 figures. Geez, that's Yeah, 7 figures. No, 8 figures, whatever. Math. He'd want at least $10 million to be somebody's starter, because that's the bottom of the going rate for starters now. So why anybody's shocked by that, I don't know, but that's probably what's going to take to get him or Jameis Winston. And, if they go that route, if they sign one of those guys to a 1-year deal or even a 2-year deal, I would really have no problem with that, because in Trubisky and Winston, in my opinion, those are 2 quarterbacks that you could possibly you can resurrect their careers. And Winston, we've already seen. I mean, I don't think his career needs much resurrecting. I mean, he just led the league in passing yards 2 years ago, 2019. He has problems with interceptions, but he's a weapon. So it wouldn't take much resurrecting there. It would just take more taking care of the football, being more disciplined. And he got LASIK surgery recently. Yes, he's coming back from a torn ACL, but it wouldn't take much resurrecting with him. As far as Trubisky is concerned, I mean, he really didn't play it all last year. I was doing some research. He got in on 6 snaps, or he completed, or he attempted 6 passes or something like that last year. He barely played. So, I think that's why his stock has risen a little bit. Like I mentioned last week, I said out of sight, out of mind, but it's more like, absence makes the heart grow fonder. And, we haven't seen a whole lot from Mitch the past year. So all of a sudden now he's a hotter commodity. So he'd be a little bit more of a risk, but I'm willing to gamble on him for 1 or 2 seasons. If you're going to pay him $10 million a year, to me, that wouldn't be unreasonable. So, that's what it's going to take to get a Trubisky or a Winston. Mariota, maybe a little bit less than that. These other guys that they were linked to, you're hearing, every day there's a new rumor. And the latest one is Jacoby Brissett, which I've always been high on. A couple years ago, when there was a whole slew of veteran quarterbacks that were suddenly on the market, and the Colts signed Phillip Rivers for 2020. I'm like, you should just give Jacoby Brissett, give him the keys. You got Andrew Luck retired. This will be his first full. 2020 should have been his first full off season, knowing he was going to be the man. They signed him to a pretty decent deal not long before that, and then they go out and they sign Phillip Rivers. So then Jacoby Brissett's on the outside looking in, and the next thing you know, he's Miami's backup last year. So I never understood why he never got a fair shake to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, because I think he has talent, and so he's the latest that's been rumored to Pittsburgh. You could probably get him for a decent contract, even if it's just 1 year. Another prove it deal. I would be okay with that. Bring him in here. Have him compete with Mason and Dwayne Haskins. And if he beats them out, great. And if he shows something during the season, he's still a young guy, young enough. Maybe you can build around him. I know it sounds crazy right now, but it's either that or it's drafting somebody, or you can do both. We got that coming up in another 5 or 6 weeks. So, even if Brissett's just your guy for 1 year while you develop your draft pick, whether it's Malik Willis or Pickett, and it's sounding less and less like it's going to be either one of those guys, especially Willis. And I knew this was going to happen. I knew his draft stock was going to skyrocket, and that's what's happening. And now it looks like he might not even make it out of the top 10, and I doubt Pickett will either. I know, a lot of these teams, like Washington now, they traded for Carson Wentz. When you obviously the Broncos don't need a quarterback now. So theoretically somebody might drop to Pittsburgh, but the Saints still need a quarterback, right? Unless they decide to re-sign Winston. So if they do that, then maybe they're not going to be in the market for a quarterback. You're starting to hear rumors again that the Giants need a quarterback, the Panthers, obviously. So I think it's rare. It seems the chances seem slim that they're gonna be able to get one of those 2 guys with the 20th pick, but you never know. if they can, if they fall in love with somebody else, whether it's Ritter or Howell or Corral, then who knows? Maybe it'll go that route too. But on that note, I just want to talk about the Steelers and their how are they going to address free agency now that they have. I was looking at it yesterday on Spot Rack, and as of yesterday anyway, they were about $29 million under the cap. So what are they going to do now? They've never had this kind of a situation really in the modern era since social media was became a thing, and everybody, and their mother spent, literally months speculating on what they would do in free agency. Now they have this money to spend. What are they going to do? Are they going to go out and get the quarterback? Are they going to address the line? Hearing things about Ryan Jensen, but on Friday, Jason Kelsey re-signed with the Eagles, and I think he's going to be making about $14 million. So you're looking at least that much right there for a player like Jensen. And it's believed that he and the Bengals have a mutual interest, even though you're not allowed to talk to anybody right now. It's not the tampering phase yet. But the Bengals have a lot of cap space too. I think more than the Steelers actually. And of course they just came off of a Super Bowl, and they have a great quarterback and a great all-around team. So if you're Ryan Jensen, you can get your top dollar from the Steelers or the Bengals. Where are you going to go? You're probably going to go to the Bengals. So the chances of him coming here seem pretty slim. They would have to overspend to get him. Hearing rumors about Carlton Davis, cornerback Bucks, Jordan Whitehead, the safety for the Bucks. I don't know. I mean, I could see them going after somebody like Davis. He seems like they're kind of a free agent. He's going for a second contract. He's a number one cornerback. He's obviously still really young. He seems like one heck of a young player, somebody you can build your secondary around, other than Minka, of course, but he can come in and immediately be your top corner. So that seems like the kind of guy that they would normally go after. But the difference between years past and now is he's a first wave free agent, meaning he's probably going to command $15-20 million a year. I looked at the prices of the top corners, and I mean, guys like Marcus Peters are making $14 million a year. So, I'm not trying to say this guy's, better than Marcus Peters or somebody like that, but he's going to probably want that kind of money, at least, if not more. And he's probably going to want a lot of guaranteed money, and not just that 1 year for the length of the contract. He's going to want a boatload of guaranteed money. So that's how they're going to have to do business now. It's no secret. I mean, they can't do, they can't do the Steeler way and just sit back and hope that one of these guys is just willing to sign with them because they're the Steelers. I mean, they have to be aggressive. They have to go out there and spend money that they're not comfortable spending. They're not used to spending, and that's just the reality of it. So, what always I find fascinating about the first wave of free agency is it's always like these high-end free agents are still players that NFL teams said, you know what, we're not going to franchise tag you. We don't think you're worth franchising. So, good luck out there on the open market. So, I mean, that's really who you're going after. And these guys just sit back and they let these teams just engage in these bidding wars for their services, and they drive their prices up. So if the Steelers want to be major players in that first wave, they're going to have to do the same thing. They're going to have to probably pay a player more than they think he's worth. That's just how business is done now. So, the fans are expecting that because all that money is right there, and they're expecting them to do something big with it. So the question is, are they going to do something big? And I wouldn't be shocked if they did, and I wouldn't be shocked if they didn't, because personally, I'm not necessarily sure that, being huge players in free agency is the way to go. Not if you're as far away from being a contender as I think they are. But I also wouldn't be shocked if they did do something big because, they've changed their ways a lot in the last 3 or 4 years. Devin Bush, Minka Fitzpatrick, Joe Hayden, the list goes on and on, the kind of moves that they've made. So, you got players out there like Bobby Wagner, who's, I wouldn't mind having him. He's 30, 31 years old, but that's about how old James Ferrier was when they signed him back in 2002, I think. Yeah, he was around that age. So you can, and he was he 30? Maybe he wasn't that old. And he was like a year younger than me, so maybe he was like in his late 20s. But still, he played for them he was a leader of their defense for many years. So why they couldn't get 4 or 5 years out of a player like Bobby Wagner in the middle of their defense alongside Devin Bush and improving Devin Bush, hopefully. That seems a move I wouldn't be opposed to. Again, though, it's probably going to cost him a good bit of money. I think he was making $18 million a year with Seattle before they cut him. So he's probably going to want around that, maybe not $18 million, but he's probably going to want close to $15 million a year. Again, a lot of money guaranteed. And if the Steelers aren't willing to give him that, somebody else will. That's just how it's going to be. He's a hot commodity. So, it's just going to be, it's a really interesting case study to see how they handle this year. Obviously I want to see them make some moves and bring in some good names just because I'm a big Steeler fan, but also I'm a big fan of reactions and fandom. And I'm just really interested to see what happens if they don't do something big, if they stick to their practical ways and sign some decent free agents, but not until like day 2 or day 3. So I'm just I don't know. Like to me, a player like Davis, I'm really hoping, because I didn't even know much about him until yesterday when I first started hearing these rumors, and I started doing some research on him. And again, he sounds like their kind of player. He's big, he's tough, he can play the run. Obviously, he's a really good cover guy, or he wouldn't be a hot commodity. But he's the guy I would like to see them. If I had to pick one player, obviously Bobby Wagner's up there too, but Davis, because he's younger and he's coming into the prime of his career. He's like Steven Nelson was a few years ago, except he's not a second or third day free agent. He's a first wave free agent. He's probably a more talented player. So he's somebody I would definitely like to see them sign. As far as Whitehead, I think you're fine with Edmonds. Why overpay for 2 safeties when you could probably get Edmonds for a cheaper deal than the 5th year option, or over the length of a multi-year contract. And Minka Fitzpatrick's already come out and said he likes playing with him. So if they work well together, you saw how that was with Troy Polamalu. He needed to have safeties that he worked well with, that he trusted to do his freelancing. So I think if one of your best defensive players likes your starting strong safety, I think you do what you can within reason, of course, to bring him back. So I hope they bring Edmonds back. Those are my Davis and Edmonds. As far as their own guys, I like Joe Hayden a lot, but I think it's time to get younger at that position. So if you can somehow find a way to secure Witherspoon, but it's probably not. If they sign Davis, they're probably not going to be able to sign Witherspoon because he's probably going to command a contract. It's not like upper echelon, but it's definitely probably more than they're willing to spend on their number 2 corner. We saw that last year with Steven Nelson. Granted, the circumstances were different because they had cap problems, but still they weren't willing to spend a ton of money on their 2 starting corners. But they're going to have to spend a lot to keep, if they want to keep, even if they do sign a Davis, they're going to have to overspend to keep a Witherspoon or even a Joe Hayden at this point. That's just how it is. So, maybe it's they'll be okay with like, for example, a Sutton on the outside and Arthur Millette or somebody like that as your slot corner, or maybe they'll draft somebody. Who knows? But at the 30-minute mark, I will wrap things up and say I can't wait to see what happens next week, both good and bad, because they're all good stories. So, and on that note, I'm going to take some questions and comments to round out the show. So see what you guys have to say about Deshaun Watson, because I know it's going to dominate everything. Let's see what we have here. And this is a doozy. You guys are going to love this question right out of the gate. This is from Chad. He says, trade TJ Watt for Deshaun Watson. Outright trade that allows TJ to fill his big brother's shoes and gives the Steelers the only realistic fighting chance they have. Well, there is that, Chad. Or they could go out and draft a quarterback and develop him into a star. That is possible too. But I don't see that happening. They're not going to trade TJ Watt for Deshaun Watson. That's just not going to happen. But I mean, it's nice. It's nice to fantasize, I guess. There, Jared Double says, LOL, trade TJ Watt. I mean, there's a good points. He can fill his big brother's shoes, but I think he's more worried about winning a ring in Pittsburgh. I think he wants to establish his own legacy. And what better way to become a immortal legend than to win a Super Bowl for Pittsburgh, a city that eats, sleeps, and everything football. I think if Deshaun Watson gets traded, it's going to be minimum 3 first-round picks. So I think that's what you're looking at, giving up for him and probably a couple of decent players. Ryan O'Toole's with us. Welcome, Ryan. Or maybe I already said that. I don't know. I can't remember. I'm a little foggy tonight. My voice, I don't have a voice. Ryan O'Toole says he brings up a great point. Those quarterback salaries kill the cap for so many teams. And that's the thing. That's, people are becoming more aware of this, especially since these quarterback salaries are becoming more and more just ridiculous, really. It's that if you find your quarterback, whether it's Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, you got to win while the winning's good. Because once you get past, and we saw it with Ben, it was a different time back then, but once they started paying his, signing him to bigger deals, it got harder to field a team because, they did their most damage with him as their quarterback over his first 6-7 years. After that, it was about, they had to make room for under the cap for his enormous contract. And you're going to see it with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. You're going to see it with Josh Allen eventually and the Bills. We saw what it did to the Ravens 10 years ago when they signed Joe Flacco to a $20 million a year deal. They had to sacrifice other players that were on that Super Bowl team that they won. And they were never really the same after that. And, half a decade later, they're looking for their next quarterback in Lamar Jackson. So, yeah, I mean, those, the window is to win with a franchise quarterback is probably less than it was years ago, and it's probably going to shrink more and more as time goes on because these salaries are just getting for these quarterbacks are getting out of hand. I mean, everybody wants to be paid more than the last guy, so it won't be long before you're seeing these guys making 60-70 million a year. I mean that's, you think that's unrealistic now? I don't think so. We're probably 4 or 5 years away from that. So, yeah, good point, Ryan. This is Steelers Pittsburgh. I mentioned earlier, reported today that the Steelers are going after Jacoby Brissett. Not saying I like it, but I called it. I mean, that's honestly, when it comes, and I heard Ryan Fitzpatrick's name bandied about on Friday too, while listening to talk radio. And, it's like I said last week, every day there's a new name. And like I said weeks ago, it's because the Steeler fans, we're just empty vessels right now. We're just willing to absorb any kind of news. We're just hungry and thirsty for any kind of news, especially about quarterbacks. So, Aaron Rodgers is gone off the table. Russell Wilson's off the table. Carson Wentz got traded to Washington. So what's next? Oh, Deshaun Watson. I heard a source close to the situation tell me that as soon as he's cleared of charges, which he was on Friday, a trade is imminent. Well, I mean, it's late Friday now, as I'm doing this podcast. is there going to be a trade, or was that just BS by Sean King, the ex-quarterback and the current radio host? I mean, if he's right, I salute him. But that's what you've been seeing over and over again. It was Jimmy Garoppolo for a while there, and even Carson Wentz for a spell, a couple weeks ago. Mitch Trubisky, get on the Trubisky train. Now that's cold a bit, but that might get hot again. And now you're talking about Jacoby Brissett, Mariota. I'm sure his name will come up in the next few days because he's really the one that you don't hear that much about as far as a destination. I bet you his name gets bandied about in the next few days. So, Brissett's the latest one, and I wouldn't be too. I wouldn't be mad about that. I mean, I like him as a young quarterback. Maybe he's reached the ceiling already, but I'd rather take him over, Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's, he can do some damage when he's on, but when he's off, he throws a ton of interceptions. Plus, he's almost as old as Ben. So, at least with Brissett, you have somebody who's younger, and in my opinion, who hasn't been given a fair shake as far as a quarterback in this league. So, I wouldn't be upset with that. I think, if you can get him in here and, at a cheap price, and he's your starter next year over Mason and Dwayne Haskins, maybe he'll really start to develop. You never know. Creix says that they about the Watson. Hope they don't go after Watson, just because the charges were dropped or not filed. Really, they weren't filed. They just decided not to press charges, kind of like with Roethlisberger. And that is a good point because, Roethlisberger's name's forever going to be stained because of the allegations against him 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And a lot of fans never got over it. I mean, if you ever talk to anybody on Twitter or Facebook, and Ben Roethlisberger's name gets brought up, whether it's an article or whatever, it isn't long before somebody brings up those allegations. And you've dealt with that if you're the Steelers for 12 years. And now if you bring in Deshaun Watson, you're going to be dealing with that for another 10, 12 years. So it would be pretty interesting if they went after him, because there's no doubt that's going to alienate a lot of people, just like Ben alienated a lot of people after his brush with the law. And I remember people mailing back their Roethlisberger jerseys. I mean, people. He was not a universally beloved figure in Pittsburgh even before that, and he certainly wasn't after that. I mean, yeah, he was mostly loved, but he wasn't. It wasn't like Troy. He wasn't Troy Polamalu kind of love where everybody loved him no matter what. He was a polarizing guy. So Deshaun Watson will certainly be that. And if the Steelers are willing to take that on, well, I mean, that's more power to them, because, they're going to be getting themselves one heck of a quarterback. But they would have to deal with all the other stuff to go along with it. So, I mean, I don't see it happening, mainly because I don't think they're going to be able to outbid. He has a no trade clause, so I guess he has a leverage. But, I just don't see. I think somebody's going to make the Texans an offer that they can't refuse, and that Watson's going to find suitable, and he's going to accept the trade. But I don't think it's going to be to Pittsburgh. And there's another point I want to bring up. I was going to write about this, but I really haven't. I've been busy the last few days. But people are like trying to equate, and I get it. People are. This is what I mean. Like nobody realizes the gravity of betting on your own sport if you're a professional athlete. And yeah, people are, criticizing the NFL because Calvin Ridley, the Falcons receiver, was suspended for a year for betting on football last year. He bet $1,500 last year, and he lost $11 million in salary as a consequence because he got suspended. And Steelers Pittsburgh says, I mean, Calvin Ridley got suspended for a whole year, and people are saying, well, what about all these players that get in trouble for domestic violence and other stuff, and they don't get a whole year? And maybe they should. Maybe they should get a whole year or more. Maybe they should get kicked out of the league for some of these heinous acts that have been committed. But it doesn't mean that Calvin Ridley shouldn't be suspended for a year, because there's the last thing any major professional sport wants is the public to think that things are not on the up and up. And that's why sports leagues are always so harsh when they find out a player was betting on their league. It happened to Pete Rose, the most famous example. Pete Rose, still a lifetime ban, not in the Hall of Fame. Most hits ever, not in the Hall of Fame. So many other, remember that Black Sox scandal? I mean, that really, from 1919, they do not want people to start thinking, and people already think that games are fixed. They don't want legit examples to point to. And that's why Calvin Ridley was so harshly punished. Should other players be punished for actual crimes? Yeah, probably they should be punished more. And maybe Deshaun Watson, that's another thing we have to talk about, is even if they do secure him in a trade somehow, he's probably going to be suspended for at least a half a year. I heard somebody saying today he'll get 2 games, maybe 6. I bet you he gets at least 8 games, because things are different now than they were 10, 12 years ago. When players would get suspended for a game or 2 for stuff. I mean, the NFL has been through the ringer with people. They're well aware of their problem, or their perceived problem. I don't think it's any different than the rest of society, but their perceived problem with domestic violence and stuff like that. So to think that Deshaun Watson's just going to get a few games, I've never believed that. I think he's going to get at least 8, and maybe he'll get the whole year. I don't know. So that's another thing you have to consider when bringing Watson in here. Yes, he'd still be young. You'd still have him for a number of years, but you're not going to have him this year. Maybe not even maybe half of this year, and that's it. So that's another thing to consider. This is Creix, who says Witherspoon is supposed to be signing 2 years for $4 million for the Steelers. I don't know. I mean, if he's a free agent, I mean, he's free to sign with whoever. If he gets to that part if he gets out on the open market. So I don't know where you're hearing that from, but if they can get him for that kind of money, that'd be great. Ken Mueller says Jimmy Garoppolo will be the Steelers quarterback in 2022. That would be pretty interesting, because you could probably get him for a couple of third, fourth round picks, maybe something like that. But you're gonna have to take on a lot of salary, so it wouldn't be the worst thing to happen, because I like Jimmy Garoppolo. But I mean, is there that much of a difference between him and Trubisky or Jameis Winston? Certainly, I'd say those guys, at least Winston, are more talented than Garoppolo, and you wouldn't have to pay them that kind of money that you would have to pay him, and they're younger too. So, I mean, if that happens, I guess they would be certainly competitive in 2022. I don't know if they would be bona fide contenders, but they would definitely be competitive. All right. This is one from the CUDA 70. This team does not have as much cap money as everyone thinks. They have to sign some of their own free agents. Yeah, well, of course they have to sign some of their own free agents, but they still are in a much better shape, or much better shape than they have been in recent years. Certainly much better shape than they were last year. And they still managed to bring some, lower end free agents in and keep some of their own guys. They lost, Hilton and obviously Dupree, Matt Filer. But, they were still able to do some business last year. Not great business, but some business. So, with close to $30 million, they're going to be able to do that much more this year. On paper, theoretically. Well, what would happen? I don't know. But if it doesn't happen, there's going to be a lot of angry people out there. And I'm here for it. just me, talking about Willis, Malik Willis from Liberty. He's starting to really grow on me. I mean, I'm really starting to fall in love with his talents, his arm especially. I mean, obviously he's a great athlete, but his arm is just exceptional. And I see some of the throw. Yeah, he's a little raw, but he also played for Liberty, which he wasn't surrounded by the greatest talent ever. Especially at the offensive line. But I mean, the talent is definitely there, and it's just a matter of if you draft a guy like that, and somebody's going to draft him, you have to commit fully to building your offense around him. Like what you have to do with any quarterback you draft in the first round. You have to commit. Don't jerk him around. Don't switch coordinators every year. Don't try to get him to learn a system that doesn't fit his strengths. You have to build your team around him, and whoever gets him, whether it's the Steelers or somebody else, I would love to see them totally commit to him, because I think he could be a special talent. So I'm really starting to fall for that guy. He's really starting to become a draft crush. This is one from NDR. Happy Friday. Hope the Steelers make the right moves. Yeah. I mean, you're not going to know right away, of course. They might make some exciting moves. Whether they're right or not, we won't know for quite some time. At least not until the beginning of next year. Clarence Washington says, Ritter, Willis, or Pickett. Those are the three. I think they're the three top quarterbacks right now. Maybe throw Corral in there as far as like the most buzz. Certainly Pickett and Willis. And this is from Ryan O'Toole. Can't draft the quarterback. If a good one is in there, why force it? Well, how do you know he's going to be good or not? That's the thing. And that's where it's easy for us to say, oh, Malik Willis, this draft class, Pickett, they're not any good. But the chances are somebody from this draft class is probably going to be a really good NFL quarterback, maybe a couple guys. So to sit here and just automatically say that they're not going to be good, it's like saying they're automatically going to be good or whatever, or they're automatically going to be bad or good. To sit here and write them off right away, I don't get that, because again, if you're them and you're in love with a Willis or you're in love with a Pickett, you're smitten, and you really believe that this is the guy for you, for your franchise, you have to draft him. You can't worry about 2023 because you don't know. But I remember when, Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold and Josh Rosen, these great quarterbacks, and look at them now. Baker Mayfield's the best of those three, and the other two are, Rosen, I don't even know if he's in the league anymore. Darnold can't, he's just seeing ghosts everywhere. So, you just never know, and that same draft, Lamar Jackson was drafted 32nd, and he's a former MVP. So if you feel strongly about somebody, you draft it. You don't reach just because you want to draft a quarterback. No, you don't do that. But if you feel strongly about a particular quarterback and you're not just, trying to talk yourself into it, you have to draft them, because you just never know. You never know. Those guys, that 2023 draft class that people keep talking about, there are no guarantees there either. It seems like it happens every year. Oh, the next draft class is so much better than this one. I hear it every year. But somebody from this draft class is going to be good, more than likely. So, if you roll the dice and it comes up sevens or whatever, I don't know. I'm tired. Then you have to go for it. And on that note, I'm going to call it a night because I'm tired. I have to go to sleep. But I thank you for sticking with me all night. And I hope you have a great weekend. And I can't wait to talk about those rumors on Monday with Brian and Shannon on The Hangover. So until then, take care. And as always, go Steelers.